The transport ship landed with a soft hum. Emma Cole stood near the exit door and waited. Through the small window, she could see the massive station floating in space. Station Helix 9, the most famous military academy in the entire galaxy, and she was about to become its first human student. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. Emma grabbed her single bag and stepped out onto the landing platform. Everything around her was too big. The ceilings were too high. The doors were too wide. This place was built for beings much larger than humans. A group of cadets stood nearby, watching her. They were tall, some nearly 3 meters high. Their skin came in colors Emma had never seen before. Silver, deep purple, pale blue. They looked at her the way someone might look at a small animal that had wandered into the wrong place. Emma kept walking. She did not look at them. She had learned long ago that showing fear only made things worse. The academy halls stretched endlessly before her. Everything was polished and clean. Ancient symbols decorated the walls. Flags from 1,000 conquered worlds hung from the ceiling. This place had existed for 10,000 years. Humans had only discovered fire a fraction of that time ago. She found the registration office after 20 minutes of walking. A bored-looking alien sat behind a desk. It had 4 arms and eyes that moved independently of each other. Name, it said without looking up. Emma Cole, human, Earth. Now it looked up. All 6 of its eyes focused on her at once. The human, it said slowly. Yes. We were told you were coming. Kuda. Kuda. It did not sound happy about this. Emma received her room assignment, her schedule, and a small device that would translate the 17 main languages spoken at the academy. She thanked the alien and left. It did not respond. Her room was on the lowest level of the dormitory building. The ceiling was still too high, but at least she did not have to climb stairs designed for legs twice the length of hers. She pressed her hand against the door panel. It opened. The room was empty except for a bed, a desk, and a small storage unit. Simple, clean, cold. Emma set her bag on the bed and sat down. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of everything. She was alone. Truly alone. The nearest human was Commander Drake, Earth's military representative on the station. But he had his own duties. He could not protect her. No one could protect her here. Emma had known this when she accepted the assignment. The politicians back on Earth wanted a symbol. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans could compete with the older species. They did not care that Emma would have to pay the price for their ambitions. She unpacked her bag slowly. A few changes of clothes. Some personal items. A photograph of her mother, who had died when Emma was 12. Her mother had been a soldier too. She had died fighting in a war that most people had already forgotten. Emma placed the photograph on her desk. "I made it, Mom," she whispered. "I'm here." The next morning came too quickly. Emma woke before the artificial sunrise and dressed in her new uniform. It was gray and plain. Designed for species with very different bodies, she had modified it herself during the long journey to the station. It fit well enough now. The mess hall was already crowded when she arrived. Hundreds of cadets sat at long tables, eating foods that Emma could not identify. The noise stopped when she walked in. Every eye in the room turned toward her. Emma walked to the food dispensers. She pressed buttons until something that looked edible appeared on her tray. Then she found an empty table in the corner and sat down alone. The whispers started almost immediately. "That's the human. Look how small it is. They only live 80 years. What's the point of training something that dies so quickly? Their bones break easily. One fall and she's done." Emma ate her food. She did not react. She had heard worse things before. Growing up on Earth's outer colonies had taught her how to ignore cruelty. This was no different. A shadow fell across her table. Emma looked up. A tall cadet stood before her. His skin was silver, and his eyes glowed with a faint blue light. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things are often beautiful. "You're in my seat," he said. Emma looked around. There were hundreds of empty seats in the hall. "I don't think so," she replied calmly. The cadet's eyes narrowed. Do you know who I am? No. I am Victor Kane. My family has produced warriors for 10,000 years. We have conquered star systems while your species was still living in caves. Emma took another bite of her food. That's nice. Victor's hands curled into fists. For a moment, Emma thought he might hit her. Part of her almost wished he would. At least then she would know what she was dealing with. But Victor just smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You don't belong here, human. Everyone knows it. The instructors know it. The other cadets know it. Even you know it. Maybe, Emma said. But I'm here anyway. Not for long. Victor turned and walked away. His friends followed him, laughing. Emma finished her meal alone. That night, she returned to her room to find the door open. Someone had been inside. Strange symbols covered her walls. Painted in something that glowed faintly in the dark, she recognized some of the symbols from her translation device. They were insults, threats, warnings. Go home, short-lived one. You will not survive here. Humans are prey, not predators. Emma stood in the doorway for a long moment. Then she went to the cleaning station, got supplies, and began scrubbing the walls. It took her 3 hours to remove everything. When she was done, her arms ached and her eyes burned with exhaustion. She did not report the vandalism. She did not complain. She simply set her alarm for early morning and went to sleep. What Emma did not know, what no one at the academy understood yet, was that she carried something inside her. Something old, something powerful. Humanity had not survived ice ages and plagues and wars by being weak. Evolution had carved something into the human soul that the galaxy's gentle species had never needed to develop. And in the darkness of her small room, while Emma slept, the shadows moved just a little bit closer to her bed. They recognized their own. They had been waiting for a very long time. Weeks passed at the academy. Emma fell into a routine. Wake early. Train. Study. Train more. Sleep. Repeat. She spoke to almost no one. No one spoke to her. The other cadets had advantages she could never match. Some species were born with muscles 3 times stronger than human muscles. Others had bones made of materials harder than steel. Some could see in complete darkness. Others could hear sounds from kilometers away. Emma had none of these gifts. She was simply human. Small, fragile, short-lived. That was what everyone told her, anyway. But Emma had something the other cadets did not understand. She had will. Pure, stubborn, unbreakable will. When the instructors ordered 50 repetitions, Emma did 100. When the training simulations defeated her, she ran them again and again until she won. When her body screamed for rest, she pushed harder. Pain was just information. Exhaustion was just a feeling. Neither of them could stop her. Instructor Tate noticed. He was an older alien with gray skin and scars covering most of his face. He had fought alongside humans during the border conflicts 20 years ago. He had seen what humans could do when they were pushed to their limits. Most of the other instructors dismissed Emma's scores. Adequate, they said. Nothing special. But Tate watched her with careful eyes. He saw something the others missed. One evening, he found her in the training hall long after everyone else had gone to sleep. She was practicing combat forms. Her movements sharp and precise. Sweat dripped down her face. Her muscles trembled with exhaustion. But she did not stop. You're going to hurt yourself, Tate said from the doorway. Emma paused. I'm fine, sir. You've been training for 16 hours. I need to be better. Tate walked closer. Better than what? Better than them. Emma gestured vaguely toward the rest of the station. Better than everyone who thinks I don't belong here. Tate was quiet for a moment. Then he said something strange. Have you noticed anything unusual lately? Anything you can't explain? Emma frowned. What do you mean? The other cadets. Have you noticed how they react when you enter a room? She had noticed, actually. But she had assumed it was just their hatred for her. Their discomfort at having a human in their precious academy. They don't like me, she said simply. It's more than that. Tate's voice was low. They're afraid of you, Cole. They don't know why, but they are. Emma almost laughed. Afraid? Of me? I'm the smallest person on this station. Size has nothing to do with it. Tate studied her face for a long moment. Get some sleep, cadet. You'll need your strength for what's coming. He left before she could ask what he meant. The next day, Emma noticed it for the first time. She was walking through the main corridor when a group of cadets approached from the opposite direction. They were large, armed with training weapons, laughing about something. They did not see her at first. Then one of them looked up. His laughter stopped. His steps slowed. The others noticed and looked too. One by one, they moved to the side of the corridor, pressing against the walls as Emma walked past. She said nothing. She did not even look at them. But she felt it now. Something in the air around her. A weight. A pressure. Like the moment before a storm breaks. The cadets did not start laughing again until she was far away. That afternoon, Emma met the only friend she would make at the academy. Riley was sitting alone in the library, surrounded by data screens. Riley was a synthoid, an artificial being created by one of the older species centuries ago. Synthoids were not considered real people by most of the galaxy. They were tools, property, objects. Riley looked up when Emma sat down nearby. You're the human. You're the robot. Riley's mouth curved into something like a smile. I prefer synthoid. But yes, they sat in silence for a while, both reading their own materials. It was comfortable. Neither of them expected anything from the other. Neither of them belonged here. That was enough. Can I ask you something? Riley said eventually. Sure. My optical sensors malfunction around you. Static. Interference. It only happens when you're nearby. Riley paused. Do you know why? Emma shook her head. No idea. Maybe you need maintenance. I've run 17 diagnostic checks. There's nothing wrong with my hardware. Riley's artificial eyes focused on her with strange intensity. My sensors detect an anomaly around you, something my programming classifies as ancient. I don't understand what that means. Emma didn't know what to say. So she said nothing. But that night, in her quarters, she thought about Tate's words. About Riley's malfunction. About the cadets who moved out of her way without knowing why. She stood in front of her small mirror and looked at herself. Brown hair, brown eyes, average height for a human. Nothing special. Nothing unusual. But when she looked at her shadow on the wall behind her, something felt wrong. The shadow was too dark. Too deep. It seemed to move even when she stood still. Just slightly. At the edges of her vision, she blinked, and the shadow was normal again. Emma told herself she was imagining things. She was tired, stressed. Her mind was playing tricks on her, but deep down, in a place she could not name, she knew something was changing. Something inside her was waking up. Something that had slept for generations, passed down through blood and bone and memory. Humanity had walked through fire to reach the stars. They had survived extinction events that killed 90% of all life on Earth. They had crawled out of ice ages with nothing but stone tools and determination. Every human alive carried the weight of all those survivors. All those fighters. All those ancestors who had refused to die. The galaxy had forgotten what that meant. The shadows had not. In the dark corners of Station Helix 9, in the spaces between the lights, ancient things watched the human girl with growing interest. They had waited millions of years for someone who could carry their weight. They had finally found her. And soon, everyone on the station would understand what it meant to stand in the presence of humanity's inheritance. Emma slept peacefully that night, unaware of the gathering dark. But Victor Kane dreamed of predators hunting him through endless forests. He woke up screaming. He did not know why. Victor Kane had not slept well in weeks. Every night, the same dreams came. Dark forests, running footsteps behind him, eyes watching from the shadows. He always woke up before the thing caught him, but he could feel it getting closer each time. He blamed the human girl. Since she had arrived, everything felt wrong. The other cadets whispered about strange feelings. Unease in the corridors. Shadows that seemed too dark. No one could explain it, but everyone felt it. Victor refused to believe that a small, fragile human could cause such disturbance. It was impossible. His species had evolved beyond fear thousands of years ago. They had removed the weakness from their blood through careful breeding. And yet, he dreamed of being hunted. He, Victor Kane, whose ancestors had conquered star systems, who had never known defeat, who had been born to rule. It was unacceptable. Victor gathered his inner circle in his private quarters. 6 cadets from the most powerful families in the Valorian Empire. They had trained together since childhood. They would lead armies someday. They would shape the future of the galaxy. The human must be dealt with, Victor said. His voice was calm, but his hands shook slightly. She does not belong here. Everyone knows this. It is time to remind her. Marcus, his closest friend, nodded slowly. What do you have in mind? The Shadow Walk. The room went quiet. The Shadow Walk was a sacred tradition at the academy. Every cadet had to complete it before their final year. It was a ceremonial path through the oldest part of the station, lit by ancient torches, lined with the banners of fallen warriors. A test of courage and dedication. Tradition allowed senior cadets to test juniors along the path. Usually, these tests were symbolic. A question about academy history, a salute to a fallen hero. Simple rituals that everyone passed, but the rules allowed for more. Much more. We will block her path, Victor continued. At the narrow point between the obsidian pillars. She will not pass unless she kneels. Unless she admits, in front of everyone, that humans do not belong among warriors. And if she refuses? Asked another cadet. Victor smiled. It was the smile of someone who had never been told no. Then, she fails the walk. She is expelled from the academy. She goes home in shame. Either way, we win. The plan spread through the academy within hours. Everyone knew what was coming. Some cadets felt pity for the human girl. She had done nothing wrong, really. She just wanted to learn, to serve, to prove that her species could stand beside the older races. But pity was not the same as help. No one offered to warn her. No one spoke up in her defense. She was not one of them, after all. She was just a human. Emma heard the rumors 3 days before the walk. Riley told her, speaking in quiet tones in the corner of the library. They're going to make you kneel, Riley said. Victor and 6 others. They'll block your path. Emma was quiet for a moment. Thank you for telling me. What will you do? Walk. Riley's artificial face showed something like concern. You don't understand. They're the best fighters in the academy. You can't defeat them. Not physically. I'm not going to fight them. Then what? Emma looked at her friend. Her eyes were calm, steady. There was no fear in them at all. I'm going to walk, Riley. That's all. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other until I reach the end. That's what humans do. We keep walking. Riley did not understand. But Riley was not human. The night before the walk, Instructor Tate found Emma in the training hall again. She was not training this time. She was just sitting, looking at the stars through the observation window. You know what they're planning, he said. Yes, sir. You're still going to walk. Yes, sir. Tate sat down beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The stars burned silently in the endless dark. I fought alongside humans once, Tate said finally. During the border conflicts, we were surrounded, outnumbered 10-1. The logical thing was to surrender, to save our lives. Emma listened. The humans refused. They said they would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. I thought they were insane. Tate paused. We broke through the enemy lines that night, lost half our forces, but we survived because the humans wouldn't stop, couldn't stop. It was like they didn't know how to give up. We don't, Emma said quietly. It's not in our programming. No. It's in your blood. Tate looked at her. I've watched you for months, Cole. You're not the strongest cadet here. Not the fastest. Not the smartest. But there's something in you that none of them have. Something that scares them, even if they don't know what it is. What is it? Tate was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. When your ancestors looked into the darkness looked back. And it blinked first. Emma did not understand. Not fully. But she felt something stir inside her. Something ancient and patient and very, very heavy. Whatever happens tomorrow, Tate said, standing, don't stop. No matter what you feel, no matter what you see, don't stop walking. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good. He walked toward the door, then paused. I've seen many warriors in my time, Cole. Heroes. Legends. Beings who could tear apart starships with their bare hands. He looked back at her. None of them scared me the way you do. Then he was gone. Emma sat alone with the stars for a long time after that. She thought about her mother. About Earth. About all the humans who had come before her. Fighting and dying and refusing to give up. She thought about shadows. When she finally went to sleep, she dreamed of walking. Just walking. Endlessly. Through darkness that parted before her like water. She was not alone in the dream. Thousands walked with her. Millions. All the humans who had ever lived. Walking together through the night. She woke up calm. She was ready. The night of the shadow walk arrived. 300 cadets lined the ceremonial path. They stood in perfect formation. Their uniforms pressed. Their faces serious. Ancient torches burned with cold blue light along the walls. Banners of conquered worlds hung from the ceiling. Some so old that the civilizations they represented no longer existed. This was the oldest part of Station Helix 9. The walls here were made of stone brought from a dozen dead planets. The floor had been walked by warriors for 10,000 years. Every great commander in the Valorian Empire had passed through this hall. Tonight, a human would walk it. Emma stood at the entrance, alone. She wore her gray cadet uniform. Her hair was pulled back from her face. Her hands hung loose at her sides. She looked small against the massive doorway. Fragile, insignificant. Victor Kane waited at the center of the path, where 2 obsidian pillars narrowed the way forward. His 6 companions stood with him in a perfect crescent formation. They blocked the path completely. Their faces showed no emotion. They were warriors. This was what warriors did. Behind Victor, the path stretched empty and dark. The finish line was there, somewhere in the shadows. Every cadet who completed the walk earned the right to continue at the academy. Everyone who failed was sent home in disgrace. The signal sounded, a deep tone that echoed through the ancient hall. Emma began to walk. Her footsteps were quiet on the stone floor. Click, click, click. Steady and slow. She did not hurry. She did not hesitate. She simply walked, one step at a time. The way humans had walked across continents and oceans, and eventually the stars. The cadets along the path watched in silence. Some of them had prepared the traditional tests. Questions about history. Salutes to fallen heroes. But something about the human girl made them forget their words. As she passed, they felt a strange pressure in their chests. A weight in the air. An urge to step back. To give her room. To look away. They did not understand why. Emma was 50 meters from Victor's formation when the lights began to change. At first, it was subtle. The torches flickered slightly. Shadows deepened in the corners of the hall. Most cadets did not notice. They were watching the human girl, waiting to see what would happen when she reached the blockade. But the Valorian cadets had secondary eyes. Eyes designed to see in complete darkness. Eyes that could detect light invisible to other species. And through those eyes, they saw something impossible. The shadows were moving. Not the normal movement of shadows cast by flickering torches. Something else. Something deliberate. Something alive. The darkness behind Emma was thickening. Gathering. Taking shapes that should not exist. Victor saw it first. His secondary eyes widened. His hearts, both of them, began to beat faster. He told himself it was a trick of the light, an illusion. There was no way that what he was seeing could be real, but it was real. Behind Emma, within Emma, moving with her steps, shadows walked. They were not human-shaped. They were older than that. Predator shapes. Hunter shapes. Things with too many teeth and eyes that glowed with cold hunger. They moved like smoke, like memory, like the ghosts of a billion years of survival. Victor recognized some of them from his nightmares. 40 meters. The other cadets in the formation saw it now, too. Their secondary eyes showed them impossible things. Ancient beasts walking beside the human girl. Warriors in primitive armor, hunters carrying weapons of stone and bone, an endless army of the dead, all moving in perfect formation. Every human who had ever lived and died and refused to give up. Every ancestor who had looked into the darkness and said, "Not today." They were all here. They had always been here, sleeping in the blood of their descendants. Emma had woken them up. 30 meters. Victor's body began to shake. He could not control it. 10,000 years of warrior breeding meant nothing against what he was seeing. His genes remembered something older than civilization, something from the time before his species had learned to think, the memory of being hunted, the memory of being prey. 20 meters. The shadows grew darker. The temperature dropped. The ancient torches flickered wildly, their light struggling against the gathering dark. Cadets along the path pressed themselves against the walls, unable to explain the terror growing in their hearts. Emma kept walking. Her face showed nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the path ahead. She did not seem to notice the shadows moving around her. Or perhaps she knew they were there and simply accepted them. They were hers, after all. They had always been hers. 10 meters. Victor's formation broke. It happened without warning. One moment, 7 elite warriors stood blocking the path. The next moment, they were scattering, pressing against the walls, their bodies moving on pure instinct. They could not help it. Every fiber of their being screamed at them to run, to hide, to get away from the thing walking toward them. Victor tried to hold his ground. He was the heir to a dynasty. He could not run. He would not run, but his legs moved without his permission. He stepped aside, pressing his back against the cold obsidian pillar. His eyes met Emma's as she walked past. She did not look at him with hate. She did not look at him with triumph. She simply looked at him the way a human looks at something very small and very far away. Then she was past him, walking through the space where his formation had stood, walking into the darkness beyond, toward the finish line that waited in the shadows. Victor tried to speak, to give an order, to salvage some piece of his dignity, but when he looked into the darkness that followed Emma, he saw something looking back at him. 1,000,000 eyes. 1,000,000,000 years of hunger. Every predator that had ever stalked human ancestors, now walking beside their descendants as allies. The darkness smiled at him. Victor Kane, heir to 10,000 years of warriors, fell to his knees. Emma did not look back. She walked through the darkness until she reached the finish line. She stopped. She turned. 300 cadets stared at her from the far end of the hall. Their faces showed fear, confusion, awe. The shadows faded. The torches steadied. The temperature returned to normal. Emma stood alone at the end of the ancient path, exactly as she had stood at the beginning, small, fragile, human. But everyone in that hall knew the truth now. They had seen what walked with her. They had felt the weight of humanity's inheritance. The darkness was not her enemy. The darkness belonged to her. The days after the shadow walk were strange and quiet. No one spoke about what had happened. The official records showed that Emma Cole had completed the ceremonial gauntlet without incident. Victor Kane and his companions were noted as having stepped aside in accordance with tradition. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. But nothing was fine. Victor had not left his quarters since that night. His companions refused to discuss what they had seen. When other cadets asked questions, they were met with silence and haunted eyes. Emma went about her routine as if nothing had changed. She woke early. She trained. She studied. She ate alone in the mess hall. But now, the other cadets did not whisper insults behind her back. They did not block her path. They did not look at her at all if they could help it. When she walked through the corridors, beings twice her size pressed themselves against the walls to let her pass. Commander Drake found her on the observation deck 3 days after the walk. He was the only other human on the station. A soldier and diplomat who had spent 20 years representing Earth among the stars. He had seen many things in his career. But even he struggled to understand what had happened. Emma stood by the great window, watching the stars. She looked tired. Not physically, but in some deeper way. Like someone who had carried a heavy weight for a long time and had finally set it down. Drake stood beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. "The Valorians are filing a formal inquiry," he said finally. "They want to know what kind of weapon you used during the walk." Emma's laugh was small and sad. "I didn't use any weapon. I just walked. That's what scares them." She was quiet for a moment. "I saw them, Commander. The shadows. For just a moment, I saw what was walking with me." Drake nodded slowly. "I know. I've seen them too, once or twice, in my worst moments, when I should have died but didn't." Emma turned to look at him. Her eyes were older than they should have been. "What are they?" Drake considered the question carefully before answering. "The older species, they evolved on gentle worlds. Planets with stable climates and abundant food. They never had to fight for survival the way we did. They never had to become what we became." "And what's that?" "Survivors." Drake's voice was soft. "Every human alive carries the weight of everyone who came before. Every ancestor who refused to die when dying was the easy option. Every mother who protected her child against impossible odds. Every soldier who kept fighting when the battle was lost. We carry all of them, Emma. In our blood, in our bones, in our souls." Emma looked back at the stars. Her mother had looked at these same stars once, and her grandmother, and her grandmother's mother. All the way back to the first humans, who had gazed up at the night sky and wondered. "The shadows," she said quietly. "They're our ancestors, in a way. They're the memory of survival itself. Evolution carved something into humanity that the galaxy's gentle species never needed. We learned to hunt, to fight, to keep going when everything said we should stop. And that learning didn't disappear when we became civilized. It just went to sleep. Until we need it. Until we need it." Drake smiled, and there was something old in his eyes too, something that recognized its own kind. "Most of the time, the shadows are quiet. We live our lives without knowing they're there. But when we're pushed hard enough, when we stand against impossible odds, they wake up. They remember. And they remind the universe what we've always been." In another part of the station, Victor Kane sat alone in his quarters. His hands had not stopped shaking since the shadow walk. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them again. The million eyes in the darkness. The predator shapes. The endless army of human dead, walking beside their descendant. He had looked into the human girl's shadow and seen something that had made his soul go cold. Not her extinction. His people had conquered star systems. They had built an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. They believed they were the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever known. They had been wrong. Humanity had not become warriors. Humanity had been warriors from the beginning. Long before they built cities or discovered fire, they had been hunters, killers, survivors. 10,000 generations of blood and pain had shaped them into something the galaxy was not prepared for. Victor understood now why the universe feared humans. It was not their technology. It was not their numbers. It was not their weapons. It was what walked with them in the dark. Riley found Emma in the library that evening. The synthoid sat down across from her, artificial eyes studying her face with concern. "Are you okay?" Riley asked. Emma considered the question. "I don't know. I feel different, like something changed inside me." "Something did change." Riley paused. I've been analyzing what happened during the walk. My sensors detected massive anomalies around you. Energy patterns that shouldn't exist. Signatures that my programming classifies as impossible. What kind of signatures? Ancient ones. Very ancient. Riley's voice was quiet. My creators built me with knowledge of species across the galaxy. I have records of civilizations going back millions of years, but what I sensed around you during the walk was older than any of them, older than most stars. Emma did not know what to say. So, she said nothing. Riley continued. I think humans carry something special. Something that the rest of the galaxy forgot a long time ago. The memory of what it means to truly survive. The observation deck was empty when Emma returned later that night. She stood alone at the great window, looking at the endless stars. Her reflection looked back at her from the glass. Small, fragile, human, but behind her reflection, in the darkness beyond the window, something else moved. Shapes without form, eyes without faces. The weight of 1,000,000 years of human survival. Watching over her, she was not afraid. They were hers. They had always been hers. And now that she knew they were there, she would never walk alone again. Years later, when Admiral Emma Cole led the combined galactic fleet against threats that would have destroyed the older empires, historians would wonder how humanity had risen so quickly, how a species that had only reached the stars a century ago had become the galaxy's greatest warriors. The answer was simple. They had never been alone. Every human who had ever lived walked with them. Every hunter who had tracked prey through ice and snow. Every soldier who had held the line against impossible odds. Every mother who had fought to protect her children. Every ancestor who had looked into the darkness and refused to be afraid. The galaxy called them newcomers. The shadows knew the truth. Humanity was the oldest thing that walked among the stars, and the darkness would always remember.